Under the bright morning light of Washington, D.C., the marble columns of the White House stood as the backdrop to a surprising revelation, one that bridged two world powers through an unexpected messenger, the First Lady of the United States. Standing before reporters, Melania Trump confirmed that she has maintained what she called an open channel of communication with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and not about diplomacy or politics, but about the fate of Ukrainian children abducted during the war. The revelation comes amid ongoing international outrage over Russia's transfer of thousands of Ukrainian minors into its territory since the invasion began. Western officials have called it an organized deportation campaign, and the International Criminal Court has even issued warrants over it. Yet today, Melania Trump's statement adds an entirely new layer, one where soft diplomacy meets humanitarian urgency. At the White House press briefing, she said calmly but firmly, "Much has unfolded since President Putin received my letter last August. He responded in writing, signaling a willingness to engage with me directly and outlining details regarding the Ukrainian children residing in Russia. And since then, President Putin and I have had an open channel of communication regarding the welfare of these children." Her words, delivered with measured grace, signal a unique role she has chosen to play in one of the war's most emotionally charged issues, the future of displaced Ukrainian children. Journalists in the East Room were quick to recall her mention of a letter sent to Vladimir Putin, reportedly handed over by President Donald Trump during the Alaska summit in August 2025, a quiet, high-level meeting that had already stirred debate across Washington and Europe. In that letter, according to aides, Melania Trump appealed directly to Putin's sense of humanity, asking for transparency on the identities, locations, and welfare of Ukrainian children taken across the border. The First Lady's initiative was said to have been crafted independently from the State Department, yet carried with it the symbolic weight of the White House. Since then, she confirmed President Putin personally replied, expressing what she described as a willingness to engage. That acknowledgement alone is diplomatically significant, an indirect communication channel between the U.S. and Russia at a time when official relations remain frozen. Inside the administration, Melania Trump's outreach has been described by aides as humanitarian diplomacy, a personal, emotional initiative intended to bypass political gridlock. Officials say her correspondence with Putin's office has included discussions about tracing family reunifications, access by humanitarian monitors, and safe return procedures for identified children. The First Lady's involvement, according to one senior official, reflects her growing independence as a public figure in her husband's second term, particularly in issues involving children, displacement and trauma. Critics, however, question the appropriateness of such direct engagement. Human rights advocates welcome the effort, but warn it could blur lines between official and informal diplomacy, especially in cases involving war crimes and international law. Yet, for Melania Trump, the message was clear. This is not politics. This is about children's lives. Moscow has not publicly confirmed the existence of this correspondence, but Russian media outlets hinted earlier this month at a private humanitarian exchange between the Kremlin and what they called the American First Lady's office. In Dushanbe last week, when asked by reporters about the issue, President Putin himself made a passing reference to ongoing discussions with the American side regarding humanitarian matters, without naming Melania Trump directly. Diplomatic analysts now believe that was a subtle acknowledgement of this very channel. The news has stirred international reaction. European Union officials in Brussels expressed cautious optimism, calling it a rare glimmer of communication between Washington and Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials in Kyiv reacted with both appreciation and restraint, acknowledging the First Lady's compassionate effort, but warning that Russia must act, not just talk. One senior Ukrainian diplomat told reporters, "Every day that these children remain in Russia is a day stolen from their future. We hope Mrs. Trump's outreach leads to concrete repatriations." Behind the political tension lies an immense human tragedy. UNICEF estimates that more than 20,000 Ukrainian children may have been displaced or transferred to Russia since the full-scale invasion began. Many have been adopted into Russian families, their names and identities changed, severing links to their Ukrainian roots. Melania Trump's advocacy, aides say, has focused particularly on identifying minors still held in orphanages or under Russian state guardianship, those most at risk of being lost forever in bureaucratic limbo. Her office reportedly worked with international NGOs, child psychologists, and tracing organizations to compile data for her letters to Moscow. This is about giving them back their names, their families, their stories, one senior advisor said anonymously. The First Lady believes motherhood and empathy can cross even the deepest divides. Still, observers cannot ignore the political subtext. Melania Trump's initiative, while framed as humanitarian, also comes at a moment when President Donald Trump's foreign policy is being reshaped, especially his pursuit of what he calls a grand peace framework across Europe and the Middle East. Her communication with Putin could be seen as part of a wider effort to thaw symbolic tensions, a soft prelude to potential negotiations involving prisoner exchanges or sanctions relief talks. For the White House, this revelation is both powerful and delicate. It paints a picture of a First Lady engaging in behind-the-scenes humanitarian diplomacy, but it also risks raising questions about accountability and oversight. One Democratic senator tweeted, "Private back channels with Putin, even for good causes, must remain transparent and coordinated with our diplomats." Still, among the American public, the reaction was largely emotional rather than political. Social media flooded with praise, calling her initiative brave, motherly, and beyond politics. Let's look back at the timeline. In August 2025, during the U.S. Russia summit in Alaska, President Trump reportedly handed over a sealed letter from the First Lady to President Putin. A month later, Russian state media hinted that a humanitarian correspondence had begun between the Kremlin and the White House. And by October 2025, Melania Trump confirmed publicly that the channel remains open and that direct written exchanges continue. Sources close to her office say communication has occurred through diplomatic couriers and encrypted letters, avoiding electronic transmission for security reasons. Interestingly, Kremlin officials reportedly referred to her as a voice of sincerity and calm in a world of confrontation. It's a statement that echoes Russia's attempt to frame her outreach as moral diplomacy, though Western observers remain skeptical. Analysts say the symbolic power of Melania Trump's involvement cannot be underestimated. Historically, First Ladies, from Eleanor Roosevelt to Michelle Obama, have shaped humanitarian narratives. But rarely has a First Lady directly corresponded with a foreign head of state on such a volatile wartime issue. Her approach humanizes a conflict that often feels distant and abstract, bringing the spotlight back to the smallest victims of war. By invoking her personal empathy rather than political authority, she has carved out a distinct role that transcends partisan boundaries. Still, questions linger. Can moral diplomacy succeed where traditional channels have failed? Can a mother's appeal reach across the Kremlin walls where countless summits and sanctions could not? As the briefing concluded, Melania Trump thanked reporters and declined further questions, saying only that conversations continue and I remain hopeful. In the following hours, the White House released no official readout, emphasizing instead that her efforts are purely humanitarian and non-political. Inside the Situation Room, aides confirmed that the National Security Council has been kept informed, though not directly involved. That detail underscores both the coordination and separation between her private advocacy and official U.S. policy.
Much has unfolded since President Putin received my letter last August. He responded in writing, signaling a willingness to engage with me directly and outlining details regarding the Ukrainian children residing in Russia. And since then, President Putin and I have had an open channel of communication regarding the welfare of these children.